You know why humans wear clothes. Everyone does. It was cold. We lost our fur. We got cold. We covered up. That's the story. It's in every textbook, every documentary, every casual explanation anyone has ever given. It's also wrong, not partially wrong, not missing some nuance. The cold theory doesn't survive contact with the actual evidence. And what the evidence points to instead is something far stranger, something that says less about our survival and more about who we really are. So if it wasn't the cold, what was it really? To answer that, you have to start with a question that sounds ridiculous. What can lice tell us about human history? As it turns out, everything. Humans have two kinds of lice: head lice, which live in your hair, and body lice, which live in your clothing. They are close relatives, descended from the same ancestor. And at some point in history, one population split into two. Head lice stayed in the hair. Body lice moved into the clothes. That split is a biological timestamp. Body lice cannot survive without fabric to live in. No clothes, no body lice. So the moment body lice diverged from head lice is, almost exactly, the moment humans started wearing clothes. In 2011, researchers sequenced the DNA of both species and calculated when that split happened. The answer came back at roughly 170,000 years ago. Let that land for a second. 170,000 years ago. The last major ice age didn't begin until around 115,000 years ago. Humans were wearing clothes for at least 55,000 years before the cold that supposedly drove them to do it even arrived. The cold theory doesn't just have a gap in it, it has a 55,000-year gap in it, which means we need a different answer entirely. So why did they actually do it? Here is where it gets interesting and uncomfortable, because the real answer isn't one thing, it's three things, and each one reveals something about human nature that we still haven't fully reckoned with. The first theory is parasites. Not cold, not modesty. Parasites. Early humans living on the African savanna were covered in them. Ticks, fleas, mites, all of them carrying disease, all of them impossible to fully remove from exposed skin. A simple animal hide draped over the body created a barrier, not perfect, but enough. Clothing as the first line of biological defense. This theory is supported by the lice timeline. Tropical Africa. No ice, no cold, just insects, disease, and the slow evolutionary pressure to find a way to keep them off your body. We didn't cover up because we were freezing. We covered up because something was eating us alive. The second theory is sexual selection, and this one goes deeper than most people are comfortable admitting. Among the great apes, our closest relatives, status and sexual desirability are communicated through the body directly. Muscle, posture, size, grooming. But humans, somewhere around 170,000 years ago, started adding something external, a layer between the body and the observer. And the clothing changes what you reveal and what you conceal. It can exaggerate certain features and hide others. And the moment that became possible, it became a tool for signaling desirability before anyone got close enough to assess the body beneath. Researchers studying modern hunter-gatherer societies have noted something consistent. In communities where clothing is minimal, what little people do wear is almost always decorative rather than protective. Beads, pelts with specific markings, feathers, pigmented hides, not warmth, display. We were not dressing for the weather, we were dressing for each other. But the third theory is the one that changes everything, because it explains not just why we started wearing clothes, it explains everything that came after. The third theory is status. Look at the archaeological record from roughly 100,000 years ago onward. The clothes and decorative objects buried with the dead are not random. The quality of materials, the complexity of construction, the presence of rare pigments, and difficult-to-source animal skins. All of it correlates directly with the apparent social position of the person buried. The powerful got the best materials, the rest got what was left. Clothing was not just warmth or display. It was the first technology humans ever used to make social hierarchy visible. Before money, before titles, before language was complex enough to carry the full weight of status. There was what you wore. A chief wrapped in the hide of a rare predator was not making a practical choice. He was making a statement that every person in that community could read instantly. I am above you. Do not test this. This is where it gets personal. Because this isn't ancient history, this is still the program running inside you right now. Think about the last time you got dressed for something that mattered. A job interview, a first date, a room full of people you wanted to impress. You did not just pick clothes that fit, You picked clothes that said something. You constructed a signal deliberately and sent it out into the room before you opened your mouth. That is exactly what your ancestor did 170,000 years ago with a carefully chosen animal hide. The technology is different, the impulse is identical, and it runs in every direction. The brands you recognize signal tribe membership. The shoes someone wears tell you which social group they belong to before they say a word. The deliberate choice to dress down in a room full of people dressed up is still a status move, just a different kind. It says, I am so far above this that I don't need to perform for it. Mark Zuckerberg in his gray t-shirt is doing the same thing a tribal elder did with a specific animal pelt. The message is identical. The medium just changed. We have been sending these signals for so long and so automatically that most of us have stopped seeing them as signals at all. We call it fashion. We call it personal style. We call it self-expression. All of those things are true, and underneath all of them, the ancient program is still running. Clothing didn't just change how humans signaled to each other, it changed what humans were capable of doing. You can move north. You can cross cold mountain passes. You can follow prey into regions no other predate could reach. But the cold was never the cause. The cold was just the first great test of something that had already been invented for completely different reasons. We didn't make clothes because the Ice Age was coming. We made clothes because parasites were eating us. And then the Ice Age came. And the thing we had already built for those other reasons turned out to also be the thing that let us survive it. The truth is that the first thing humans ever invented to put on their bodies was not a tool for survival. It was a tool for social manipulation. A way to control what other people thought of you before they knew anything about you. A way to lie or at least to curate before you said a single word. That impulse, to manage the impression you make, to signal the tribe you belong to advertise what you have and conceal what you don't, is not a modern vanity. It is 170,000 years old. It predates agriculture. It predates written language. It predates cities and money and religion. It might be one of the oldest specifically human behaviors that still exists in essentially unchanged form today. You got dressed this morning. You made choices, consciously or not, about what those clothes say about you, who you are, where you belong, what you're worth. You were not thinking about parasites. You were not thinking about ice ages. But somewhere underneath all of it, the same calculation your ancestor ran on the African savanna 170,000 years ago was running in you. What does this say about me? What will they think when they see it? It was never about the cold. It was always about this. Continued. And the story doesn't stop there, because once clothing became a status signal, it became something that could be taken, something that could be given, something that could be withheld. In almost every early civilization we have ever excavated, clothing appears in the same context as power. The pharaohs of Egypt wore linen so fine it was nearly transparent, a fabric that took hundreds of hours to produce that no common person could ever afford. The Roman toga was not just a garment. It was a legal document you wore on your body. The color, the width of the stripe, the quality of the weave, all of it communicated your exact position in the social order to every person you passed in the street. Wearing the wrong toga in Rome was not a fashion mistake. It was a crime. Medieval Europe made this even more explicit. Sumptuary laws, actual legislation, dictated exactly what fabrics, colors, and styles each class of person was permitted to wear. Peasants could not wear silk. Merchants could not wear fur. Purple was reserved for royalty in many kingdoms. Not because of tradition, because allowing the lower classes to dress like the upper classes would make it impossible to read the hierarchy at a glance. And a hierarchy you cannot read is a hierarchy that starts to dissolve. Clothing was not decoration. Clothing was infrastructure. It was the visible operating system of the social order, and they protected it with the force of law. This is why sumptuary laws appear independently in ancient China, in Japan, in the Byzantine Empire, in medieval Europe. We dismantled the formal laws, but we never dismantled the system underneath them. We just moved the enforcement from courts to culture. Today, the hierarchy is maintained not by legislation, but by price. A coat that costs $800 and a coat that keeps you equally warm for $40 are functionally identical objects. The difference between them is entirely the signal they send. We were trained to read it the same way our ancestors were trained to read the difference between a chief's pelt and a commoner's wrap. You don't need a law to enforce a dress code when everyone has already internalized it. And then came the machine. The Industrial Revolution did something that would have been incomprehensible to every ruler who ever wrote a sumptuary law. It made fabric cheap. Mass production collapsed the cost of clothing so dramatically that within a century, almost anyone could dress like almost anyone else. The old visual hierarchy started to blur, and the fashion industry was born specifically to redraw the lines. New trends every season, new signals every year, fast enough that wealth could always stay one step ahead of everyone trying to catch up. The game didn't end. So here is where you actually are. You are a member of a species that 170,000 years ago started draping things over its body for reasons that had nothing to do with temperature. You inherited a brain that reads clothing as social data before it registers almost anything else about a person. You live inside an economy that was built, at least in part, to continuously monetize that ancient signal reading instinct. Every season of new trends, every brand with its carefully managed meaning, every fast fashion cycle that makes last year's status signal look dated. All of it is downstream of the moment one human looked at another human and understood that what you wore could change how you were treated. You are not immune to this. Nobody is. The research on clothing and perception is unambiguous. People in higher status clothing are judged as more competent, more intelligent, more trustworthy before they say a single word. We know this consciously. We still do it anyway. Because the system doing the judging is not the conscious part of your brain. It is something much older. Something that learned a very long time ago that what a person wears is a fast, reliable signal about who they are and what they represent. It got you through 170,000 years. It's not going to stop now just because you read an article about cognitive bias. So the next time you stand in front of a mirror deciding what to wear, or the next time you clock someone across a room and form an instant impression before they've spoken, or the next time you feel that specific anxiety about wearing the wrong thing to the wrong place. That's not vanity. That's not shallowness. That's not you being superficial. That is one of the oldest programs in the human operating system running exactly as it was designed. 170,000 years ago, on a savanna in Africa, a human made a choice about what to put on their body. Not because of the cold, because of something much more complicated, much more human, and much harder to admit. And you have been making that same choice every single morning since 170,000 years ago.